Cubans are known for being loud, bad at timekeeping, and with very intrusive families. We are colorful, we are very affectionate, and we like to dance a lot. Turns out a lot of people in India are very similar to us. When I first met Ipsita in the fellowship, we realized so many things we had in common, not only culturally, but when it comes to our role as journalists and the dangers we face doing our work in repressive environments. How do we operate under these circumstances? It's something that I've been trying to answer my question myself. In April 2018, students and civil society in Nicaragua took to the streets to protest a new government regulation on pensions. They were met with repression and violence from the government and supporters of the ruling party. This is how the civil unrest started. It took hundreds of lives. It brought the country to chaos and wounded, imprisoned, and killed journalists.
Last February, my colleague and I found ourselves at the center of a Hindu right-wing mob in northeast Delhi. As we made our way through the crowd, our phones, our names, our press IDs were checked. We had Hindu names, so we were allowed to stay and report. A citizenship law passed 3 months earlier had brought us to this moment. Along with the new law, the Indian government wanted to compile a national register of citizens. Many feared these measures were aimed at stripping Indian Muslims of citizenship. Across the country, Indians rose up in protest, and inevitably there was a backlash, as the government accused protesters of sinister conspiracies to destabilize the state. Hindu right-wing mobs chanted slogans, "Kill the traitors." In Delhi, protests turned to communal violence.
For us, the unrest started with a fire in Indio Maíz, a protected area of tropical forest. It took the government 4 days to declare yellow alert and rejected any help from neighboring countries. People's protests against the government's apathy were squashed. A few days after this, the government passed this unpopular regulation on the social security system, and this prompted mass protests across the country. But once again, our right to protest was met with violence and repression. As we prepare now for general elections this year, the government has approved a new cybercrime law that puts journalism and democracy in danger. This is not an empty threat. It's a clear pathway to prosecute journalists, activists, and presidential candidates. It seems there will only be one presidential candidate running for this year's election, which is just the president himself, since literally everyone else is going to be prosecuted. How do we report on an election like this? Objectivity is something we learn from day one in the newsrooms, but when our lives are in danger, it seems like a very naive ideal. If there is one thing I've learned during these 6 months of the fellowship and doing interviews with journalists from trouble zones, we may all have many different skills and tools, but we all have the same response where there are barriers to get that story out. We persevere.
That day in February, a strange complicity developed between the mob and us. As the crowd ebbed and surged, we were pulled along with it. When the police fired tear gas shells, we retreated. We walked back cautiously when the police had turned away. At some point, we heard people fall upon a Muslim man trying to flee to safety. I stifled a cry as I saw people from the crowd break away to lob petrol bombs at Muslim shops and homes across the street. To object was to give ourselves away as not like them. Because when the men in the mob spoke to us, that is what they assumed. We were like them. They claimed Muslims had started the violence. They justified the attack saying Hindustan is for Hindus. President Trump was visiting Delhi at the time, so they were holding back, they said. Once Trump left, Muslims would not be spared, they said. The media should help the Hindus, they said.
During my time in Oxford, I did not only meet amazing fellows from different countries and cultures like Ipsita, I've also been looking for ways to help colleagues back home and around the world. I have been trying to gather tools and resources in an interactive handbook to to help journalists report safely and accurately during an emergency, from natural disasters to technology crisis to civil unrests. And even though there's only so much we can do when our lives are in danger, I still believe that preparation and perseverance can help us do the best job we can.
As I look back on that terrifying day, I wonder if we had the tools to tell the story. Be objective, we'd been told in our newsrooms. Be calm, be distant, get all sides of the story. But where does it all go when you're caught in your own story? In India, we are faced with realities we never could have imagined. And as journalists, we have to keep reinventing ourselves to keep up with them.
Do you remember the first time you realized you wanted to be a journalist, or you realized what you wanted to do in life? I do. There was a TV channel who was looking for a kid who wanted to be a journalist when they grew up. So this kid will be talking about new opportunities for young people who used to belong to gangs. And that kid was me. I was 8 and already a seasoned journalist. I used to tell the stories of my neighbors and their pets for many years. I was a TV anchor working out of my backyard. My toys and my dog were my audience. Many years have passed since then, as you can see. But till this day, I still believe in journalism, the power it has. And also, I admire my colleagues in Nicaragua whose belief and passion remains untouched as they won. We have learned to carry on, no matter the obstacles, to get the story out there, to amplify the voices that needs to be most heard against government crackdowns and state-sponsored violence, to report with passion and empathy, even when the prison walls close in.